to another episode of the Healing Pop podcast, y'all. I am your host, Izzy. Those of you who tuned in for last week's episode, we just kind of, got to know each other a little bit, and I welcomed myself back into the realm of the internet. But anyway, I'm back again for another episode. We are going to have a conversation about living alone and being your own best friend. For those of you who don't know, I'm finally living by myself for the first time pretty much ever. But I've always kind of lived with like roommates or partners. More frequently it's like usually partners, but I guess maybe it's kind of split, and I'll get into that. So yeah, I just wanted to talk to you guys about that a little bit because I feel like in this society that we live in, like, we rely so heavily on like our community, right? Growing up the way that I did, community was everything. Having your tribe was everything. And I think I grew to sort of become almost like dependent on it, to the point that I was like fearful of being without it. And not only did I feel like I needed that safety, but I also neglected like my own desire to seek my own personal guidance and intuition. I was not confident in myself, and that led me down a string of hairy situations, questionable decisions. Those bad choices just led to more shame that built up over time. It was something that I needed to unlearn through patience, self-acceptance, distance, which I avoided almost at all costs growing up, or straight up just substituted with the safety and the security that I found with others. And that was before I learned to trust myself and my own capacity and like really get to know that. That's where I was for a really long time. And I'm finally at a place where I can say that I've learned how to be my own best friend and how to advocate for myself and be able to tell like when I need space and distance and where to find it when I need it. So I just wanted to be able to share and have that conversation with you guys today with a little bit of backstory. There's definitely going to be some backstory in there. So I wanted to start by kind of like talking about my history with living and how my living situations have kind of like developed over the last 10 years. Wow. Okay. Well, I'm like looking at my timeline, and it starts off from like childhood to 18 and then ends at 28, which is how old I am now. So that's crazy to think about. It's been 10 years since I've been legally an adult or like, you know what I mean? So when I was obviously a kid, I lived with my family. I have two older siblings, so they were out of the house when I was growing up. For the most part, they were already in their 20s, so it was really just myself, my mom, and I have a twin brother. So it was just really the three of us living together. So up until the point that I was 18, 19, I was living at home with my family. And, like, I think everybody can acknowledge that, especially like growing up, is you are going to get into like tiffs with your family, and that's just kind of natural. It's a natural progression of just like growing up. And so that very much was the case living at home with my family. I love my mom and I love my twin brother so much. He was like always my built-in best friend, but we're all very different. So, it came with some tribulation. So that's where I was when I was 18, up to 18 years old, living with my family, up until the point that I kind of started going to school, like college, or graduating from high school and going to college. But when I graduated from high school, I went to a community college in my hometown. So I stayed at my house with my family for that year that I was going to school. And then I don't remember exactly the year, but I want to say it was like 2018 or 2017 that my family, so my mom, my brother, my older siblings, they all moved. Like I said in the last episode, they all moved to a different state, and I was still in school, so I stayed in my hometown and I just continued to live in my house. And I think that like situation kind of like set me up to, which I didn't know at the time, but now that hindsight is really just a gift. Thinking back, like it really set me up well to feel comfortable with being alone, even though at times it was a little scary. So that was from like 18 years old to, I want to say 19, 20. And then when I turned 20, around the age of 20, I want to say, I think I mentioned this in the last episode as well. I applied to the college that my boyfriend at the time was going to, which was still in our home state. It was just in a different city. I lived with this one girl in like a little dorm apartment, dorm room, whatever. And for anyone that's been to college, like it's just one room pretty much. And like you got your beds on your separate sides. And then there's like a shared bathroom that you all kind of like you two and the other two people on the other side of the door like would use. There was no flexibility for me, or at least I didn't feel like there was any flexibility of me to really express myself. And I was always looking for an excuse to not be in that space. So that was terrible. I blocked it out. I mean, no shade to my roommate. She was a sweet girl, but like we were just complete polar opposite. I just remember there was one time that like she must have thought I was sleeping, but she was like having conversations with her man like while I was there, like in the room. And so it was just so uncomfortable, just to name one of the examples. That was such a bad experience. That was like technically my first living situation. I learned in that time kind of what it looked like to be a roommate that people didn't like, right? And I never wanted to be that. I never thought that I really was that because I was so easy. But, you know, come down the line, I would learn more about the things that other people didn't like that I did. And then I'd have to adjust, right? I moved out of those apartments and I moved into a house with my boyfriend, still same boyfriend, and his two other roommates. It was like a 3-bedroom house. So it was the 4 of us living in this 3-bedroom space. And it was like pretty sizable, but like I was also the only girl sharing a house with 3 boys. I didn't like confrontation. I was pretty good at like, I think because I grew up in a household where I could kind of like blend into the wall pretty much, except for the moments that I couldn't. Like it was I was already predisposed to being able to like kind of stay out of the way, I guess, so to speak. And like they had been living there already and I kind of just joined them basically. Like it's not like we all signed up to live there. They were already living there and I came and lived there with him. And we went, and like I went to school still and they were all in the same college. So we were all living in this house and I was pretty much there up until the point that we got to in the last episode. So you guys already know how that ended. But when I was living there, like, you know, it was a boys' house. Like, I don't know if for anyone that's lived with men, you might know what I'm talking about. Like, we were in college too, and those boys some of them were in, what's it called? I know that for girls it's called sororities. Is it called sororities for guys too? I don't know, but they were like into sports and like into all that crowding stuff. So like there were parties that happened there all the time. It wasn't a bad experience. Like it was an experience and I took it for what it was. In that period of time when I was living there is really when it was drilled into me. I had to pull more weight just to stay there psychologically and definitely unconsciously. Like I wasn't aware that I was building up this idea in my head that would later down the line like affect me heavily when it came to living with people. And it did so much to my self-esteem without me even realizing it. And just for it to end the way that it ended, which I talked about in the last episode, it really just wrecked me in ways that I can't even like describe. So that's where I was living from the ages of 21 to 22. And then as you guys all know, we're kind of back to square one from the last episode. I moved to a different state, and then I was back at living with my mom and my brother again. My relationship with my mom wasn't the best, and I'll get into that in another topic another day, but just to kind of like paint a little bit of a picture, we're different generational times, and there were just a lot of places in life, just as far as the things that I was dealing with. I had a lot of mental health issues when I was a kid and a young teenager. She never really fully understood it, and therefore, because of the generational gap, she passed a lot of judgments that I just didn't like. And as much as I loved and love my mom, at this point in my life, I was so scarred subconsciously from, like I said, not really ever feeling understood by her. It was easier to seek acceptance externally than it was to stay and just nurture that relationship. That was definitely my young brain and my escapism just like speaking louder than logic at that point in my life. And I knew that, and I knew that ultimately I did want to live away from them. I didn't know at the time that I wanted to live alone, but I knew I wanted to live away from my family. When I was in college, even though I was living with roommates or my boyfriend at the time, my relationship with my family was so much better because we're on top of each other all the time. We were very considerate of and meaningful of the time that we'd spend like calling each other up and talking on the phone, and like that just kind of evaporated when I lived with them. And I think that happens to a lot of people. I've known quite a few people that have had to like go back to living at home, and that's never easy for anyone. Sometimes it's super necessary to rely and lean on your family if you need it. And I am really grateful that even though maybe our emotional connection wasn't always the best, and sometimes I felt like emotionally trapped, I always knew they were there for me. Eventually, my partner at the time and I, like, we wanted to live together, like actually live together. So we had made a plan that when their lease ended, we were going to move into a place. And I think I mentioned in the last episode, I'm very fantasy-like. So like when an idea comes to me, I'll be like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. And I'll start thinking about all the ways in which, you know, it'll work out and it'll be great. I jumped into the idea of us moving in together. We were looking for a place. And then my friend and I were talking. She was like having issues in her current living situation, and she just needed a change. We came up to the conclusion that, oh yeah, she'd move down here and then we'd all get a place together. We lived there maybe for a year. My ex-partner at the time, who I was living with, moved out before the end of the lease, and my friend and I stayed. I would like to eventually like touch on that dynamic and that relationship in a separate video, but just for the sake of this being like a particular topic around living alone, I'm just going to kind of keep it pushing. I think I just really needed to hit rock bottom and just really see that I was consistently making the wrong decisions or blinded decisions, be it financially, interpersonally, or emotionally, in an effort to run away from the fear of disappointing the people in my life. I had created a lot of trauma for myself from that experience, just the way that it played out, and that complex, so to speak, that I had talked about when I was living with my boyfriend back in college that I had brought up, came back tenfold when I was in this living situation, especially when my partner left. Because now I was in a position where I knew that I was not financially pulling my weight in that space. I conditioned myself to truly solidify and believe that I was incapable of being able to sustain a living situation on my own at all. Like that idea just completely just like blew up in my face. The moment that I tried, it worked for a minute. And then when it was more pressure on me, I failed epically. And it blew up in my face, and I lost a friend out of it. And so, you know, I had to go back to living with my mom and my brother. And at this point, I had met, like, before I even moved, I had met my partner, Caitlin, I'll just give her a name now. Hi, Caitlin. I know you're probably going to watch this. So I had met her, and we were deep in the honeymoon phase. And this was still when I was living with my friend at this apartment. And once again, spent all my time at Caitlin's house. Caitlin was honestly she was a saving grace, because we were actually able to like have conversations around the fears that I was having and the insecurities that I was having around living in her space, being at home. Like, she was the first person that I actually ever had those conversations with outside of myself. For a long time, I just held on to it and let the shame kind of just build up in me. She was the first person that I was able to have that conversation with while I was living with her. And so when I was living with Caitlin, she reminded me that it was okay that I didn't have a lot to provide, that I didn't even have to provide anything. She just wanted me to feel safe. I got to unlearn that mentality when I was with her because of the reassurance that she offered me at the time when I was staying there. And she supported me eventually when it came time to get into my own space. And not only that, she believed in me that I could do it. I just had so much doubt inside me. And I still have and struggle with doubt. But it's not nearly as strong as it was when I wasn't seeing the results that I wanted to see. I just kept seeing the failures that I would conjure. So yeah, huge thank you to Caitlin. She gave me the landscape to be able to build for myself with her support. I would not be right now here in this amazing, well, it's not like a freaking like suite or anything, but it's my own space, and I'm so proud of it. So that's kind of what my trajectory of living kind of looked like. Sorry, that was a really, really long, but I needed to paint like the picture of like what my living experiences had been like, so that you can understand just truly how important and significant it was and is for me to finally be in my own space, and what I've learned from all of that and what I'm learning currently. So with that being said, let's kind of like get into that part now. I wanted to read some quotes from articles that I found regarding living alone with you guys, and also just go over, like, I have a top 7 personal benefits that I saw from living by myself, and then I want to counteract them with some of the ones that I was seeing online. So for me, the top benefits of living alone have been creating your fantasy living space, having a place to go to decompress fully, finding joy in your own company, being yourself without judgment, having time and space to set goals, the encouragement to seek meaningful interactions around you and outside of your home. Also, the ability to say bad energy is not invited in here. This is a safe space. So I'll kind of break those down a little bit, and then I'll get into the quotes that I saw and picked out online. So creating your fantasy living space, I kind of put in a lot of time into this space. Like, I really did. I've just never had full autonomy to say how my space is created. But when you live alone, the only person you got to ask for permission is yourself and your apartment complex. Probably, for some things, depending on what you're doing. But if everything's pretty modest, you can create the space you want to live in. And I took that so seriously when I moved out on my own for the first time. I was like, not that I have any quarrels with the people that I've lived with in the past, but because of my overcompensation and because of my lack of liking confrontation, I usually let other people call the shots when it came to how the place looked. And I was fine with that, But as soon as I got into my own space, and honestly, when I was living with Caitlin, I will say she let me have so much freedom to decorate her apartment however I wanted. And that was really the first time that I learned that I could do that, and that it was cool, and that I had some good ideas. So when it came time for me to live in my own space, I let my imagination run wild. So creating the space, the fantasy space that you want to live in, is so important, because you get to wake up here every day. You know where everything is. It's exactly as you want it. You could live in a Pinterest board if you wanted to. It really just helps make the space so much more magical and meaningful when you get to dictate and put the time into it. Having a place to go to decompress fully. Something that I pulled from when I was living in all my other circumstances. It never really felt like my home. It felt like someone else's home that I could be in, but it never felt like mine. And so therefore, that's not where I would go to decompress. When I came to living in my own space, I really just appreciated having a place to call my own that I could come and decompress after a long day at work. Or if I got into an argument on the phone with somebody, I could go home and just like journal about it, put on some music, light an incense, like just creating that space where I could go to create the safeness that I was so craving in the years prior that I just did not give myself. Finding joy in your own company. Now, I do know that's something that a lot of people struggle with is learning how to be alone. And I hope that everybody can learn to love being in your own company, because there's nothing more uncomfortable than like feeling so uncomfortable in your own skin that you are searching for someone to fill that elsewhere, or things to fill that elsewhere, or substances to fill that elsewhere. Truly just being okay and comfortable in your own skin with your own company, I think is a huge slay. I find so much joy in like getting to hang out with myself and see the things that I'm interested in that pull me into them, and the thoughts that conjures up within me, and the way that I learn better when I'm alone. It really does give you the time and the space to get super comfortable with yourself, or it can if you let it. And then that's kind of tied also into being yourself without any judgment. I think when we live with other people, like we're kind of always like tiptoeing around them, and we're always a little fearful. Just as humans, I think we're a little fearful of what people think about us, and doing things that might rub people the wrong way. You live by yourself, don't piss yourself off. That's all I'll say. I think naturally, I mean, it depends on the type of person you are. I do believe naturally we, especially when there's nobody else around, we have the ability to give ourselves so much compassion that you can feel just so much more empowered to just be yourself exactly as you come, because there's nobody else there to give a face. So take advantage of that if you do get the chance to live alone. And if you're thinking about living alone, look forward to that. Like, enjoy who you are, learn who you are, and bring that person outside and just see what happens. Because when we spend too much time with other people and we're constantly reframing and readjusting ourselves to the people around us, we start to lose sight of who we actually are, and we doubt that person when we're out in public. So a huge benefit that I've seen with living by myself is just like spending the time getting to know myself, being really comfortable with that person, and kind of liking taking her outside every once in a while. Having time and space to set goals is also super important. Like, you see me here. Like, I talked about this in the last episode. I've been wanting to start a podcast since Caitlin and I started dating, right? And that was like 2-3 years ago. When you're in your own space, I do think that it makes it so much easier for you to be able to take the time to set those goals free of judgment from other people. Your creative juices might be flowing a lot better when you're by yourself, just because you're already set up in that environment to listen to your own voice. Living on your own and not living with others makes your interactions become way more meaningful. Now, there's always a possibility of self-isolation, which was one of the fears that I had. But to counteract that is to create meaningful interactions with the people in your life. I found that living alone makes that so much more attainable, because you don't get to see those people every day. You basically only get to see them when you want to. So you have to mean it. And that can sometimes look like having people over, or going over to people's houses, or going to get lunch with your mom, or meeting up at the pool if it's hot and summer outside. Like, there's so many ways that you can get in touch with your community that can be bolstered by you living by yourself and having a place where at the end of the day you can go back home to. You have an escape pad to leave to. And so for someone who, I don't know about y'all, but I know that's something that I struggled with, was like social anxiety. And so when I was living with my partners or my friends, like I was already just so amped up from the interactions that I would have at home. Didn't even want to go make plans with others. And then the 7th one was just kind of fun. I liked this one. I was feeling a little spicy when I said it, but like, bad energy is not invited in this house. It's just not. Like, because I am the gatekeeper of this space, you get to decide who comes in and out of those doors. Maybe not out. Knowing that I get to live in my own space and I get to control who comes in is such a huge relief for me, as someone who really values their own peace. According to Psychology Today, people feel more authentic when they are alone than when they are with other people. Those who are drawn to solo living for positive reasons are unlikely to feel lonely. They are not afraid of having time to themselves, and they flourish in solitude. That very perfectly solidifies everything that I was saying with feeling more authentic. It's been so long since I've really felt like myself and really looked in a mirror and like recognized myself. According to just regular schmegular Google, aka AI, since it's everywhere, I've got some quotes here that I wanted to share. Living alone can have both positive and negative impacts on mental health. While it can promote personal growth, self-awareness, and reduce stress, it can also increase the risk of social isolation and loneliness. However, with the right approach, living alone can be a positive experience that fosters independence, self-discovery, and a stronger sense of self. It is what you make of it and how you choose to use it that will dictate your emotional response to it. Being your own best friend means, bring out your notepads, treating yourself with the same kindness, understanding, and support that you would offer a close friend. It involves practicing self-compassion, engaging in positive self-talk, and prioritizing your own well-being through self-care. It also means getting to know yourself deeply, accepting your flaws, and celebrating your strengths. Every single person that exists on this earth needs to be on a personal journey, because we can be really, really freaking good at talking to and supporting our friends and really crap at doing it for ourselves. So one of the biggest goals that I had when I moved into my own space was to be my own best friend for this exact reason. I was terrible at doing that for myself. Setting boundaries was unheard of. Listening to myself, being nice to myself, totally unheard of. So living alone really helped me learn how to do that in like a really freeing kind of way. According to calm.com, enjoying your own company can start with self-acceptance and recognizing your worth. Spend time doing activities you love that make you feel good about yourself, like finding a new hobby, diving into a book, or indulging in your favorite movie or music. Find joy in the things that you do alone to help boost your self-esteem and independence. Consider setting personal challenges or goals to achieve during your alone time, as this can provide a sense of accomplishment. Over time, you might find that you look forward to these moments with yourself, appreciating the freedom and the peace that they bring. Couldn't be more true. According to the JED Foundation, they say being connected to people is important for your happiness and well-being, but it's also helpful to balance social time with taking time for yourself. Learning to be alone can give you space to think about your feelings, ideas, hopes, problems, and experiences. It's also a great way to get to know yourself better and spend time resting and relaxing. We're always just go, 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 go. If you're slacking, you're not doing enough. Like that's the general consensus about being a productive adult in the United States, which I just think is so silly, you know? And there's also more ways to be a productive member of society that can benefit your mental health. So why not start there? Well, let's start there. I think that's, I want to say, pretty much all of the quotes that I had. And I'll find a way to insert this as well. But I found like this like pyramid of self-care needs, which didn't really have anything to do specifically with living alone, but I thought it was super informative, and it was also just really cute. I'll try to put a picture of it in the video when I get to editing, but it's basically like if you've ever seen was it Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that like triangle, I forgot, but this one is like the pyramid self-care of needs. And at the very bottom, it talks about daily self-care. It says, practice positive self-talk or affirmations, set boundaries with your time and with others, take breaks, sleep, rest mentally and physically, create a nourishing daily routine for basic needs, move your body and spend time outside and let yourself relax. So important. And those are some of those things that they list in there are things that we've talked about today. And then it goes up to do the ones that are more like weekly self-care, monthly self-care, yearly self-care. And those ones are going to be more like budgeting and meal planning and quality time and going out and like road trips and vacations and all that. Like, but the ones at the bottom, the daily self-care, I just wanted to read. Another fun quote that I found, which I just felt like perfectly kind of ties the humble beginnings, like that you might have come from to where you are or where you're going, is the soul is not in a rush. We are all just beautiful souls just dancing around in these physical bodies, but your soul is not in a rush to get to where you need to go. So be patient, be kind, be courageous, and take rest. If you're finding that you're really lonely or you're depressed, always reach out to, if you have a therapist, your therapist, a trusted friend or family. And if for whatever reason you can't get in touch with any of those individuals, you could always reach out to the mentalhealthhotline.org or call them at 866-903-3787 if you need crisis management, someone to talk to if you're going through it. So first and foremost, always take care of yourself, look after others, but don't give too much of yourself to the point that you are neglecting yourself either. Take pride in your space and care for it like you would care for someone else's home. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you. Please like and subscribe if you're digging the content. If you have any friends that you think this might be a helpful video for them to listen to, please send it to them either on YouTube. The Spotify link will also be available in the description box. You can follow me on Instagram at the Healing Pot Podcast, which you can also find on my main Instagram channel. All of these links will be provided in the description link below. I appreciate you guys all so much for being here. If you have any questions or anything you want to talk about in my upcoming videos, please don't hesitate to send me a message. I'm always open to like getting feedback, and I do really want to hear like how this information is landing to you guys. So don't hesitate at all to reach out to me, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, bye.